Tonight, the humanitarian crisis at the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe.
In Mexico, Vice President Harris meets with President Obrador with no plans to visit the southern border.
Plus, ransom recovery.
Today, we turned the tables on DarkSide.
The D.O.J. takes back millions from the Russian cybercriminals who hacked the largest fuel pipeline in the U.S. And a new bipartisan report sheds light on major missteps before the January 6th attack on the Capitol.
And the invasion. With so many cicadas swarming around Washington, the bugs are showing up on weather radar. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Cyber attacks in the United States fighting back. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm Jenna Browder.
And I'm Eric Phillips. Tonight we are learning what went wrong after a ransomware attack completely shut down a major fuel pipeline. If you live on the East Coast, you likely felt a direct impact last month, either by waiting in gas lines or seeing higher prices.
Yeah, driving around to lots of different gas stations. Well, today that company's CEO told senators how to better protect critical infrastructure moving forward. CBN News national security correspondent Caitlin Burke has our top story.
Those behind the operation of the Colonial Pipeline thought their systems were secure. Then Russian hackers shut them down.
We felt comfortably historically that we're where we felt we needed to be to protect our assets. This threat grows every day. The sophistication of this threat grows every day.
During this Senate hearing, Colonial Pipeline CEO Joseph Blunt told lawmakers that private companies and the government need to work together to prevent against future attacks.
I think if we look at the number of incidents that are taking place today throughout the world, let alone here in America, it's private industry alone can't do everything, can't solve the problem totally by themselves. So it's the partnership between private and government is very important to fight this ongoing slaught of cyber attacks around the world.
With such an ever-evolving threat, lawmakers acknowledge the U.S. can't keep playing defense.
We need to start imagining what can happen and respond accordingly, as opposed to always be looking at what the last problem was.
The Justice Department showed the fruit of its more aggressive approach in dealing with ransomware attacks, revealing it recovered some of the ransom Colonial paid in order to get their systems back online.
This represents the swift whole-of-government response represented in the work of this task force and our determination to go after the entire ransomware criminal ecosystem used by these types of criminal networks and their affiliates, which are targeting and going after, including in disruptive ways, our critical infrastructure.
The DOJ's major warning: no one is immune.
Pay attention now. Invest resources now. Failure to do so could be the difference between being secure now or a victim later.
Given the international component, the Biden administration is considering these attacks a national security priority and calling on other countries to monitor their cryptocurrency transactions. The president is also expected to discuss the issue with Russian President Putin next week in Geneva. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Thanks, Caitlin. Meanwhile, the vice president on her first foreign trip and facing growing criticism tonight for where she's not going, the U.S.-Mexico border.
Kamala Harris is meeting today with the president of Mexico after a visit to Guatemala on Monday. Her goal: shut down the border surge and the many political problems that go with it. Senior national affairs correspondent Heather Sells reports.
While the vice president is visiting Mexico today on the second leg of her trip, many Republicans, like Texas Senator John Cornyn, say she should be closer to the problem. Even the mainstream media is asking. Like NBC News' Lester Holt.
Do you have any plans to visit the border?
At some point, we are going to the border. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I don't understand the point that you're making.
Last month, CBN's Eric Phillips also asked White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, who pushed back, saying the focus is working to treat immigrants humanely.
We're less worried about press conferences or political games that are being played by some.
The Migration Policy Institute's Andrew Seeley tells CBN News he believes Harris sees her role as primarily diplomatic, preferring to let Homeland Security oversee the border, then added, "It's not possible to completely separate one from the other, and I suspect that the vice president will eventually have to engage more closely with border policy." Today, Harris met with Mexico's Andrés Manuel López Obrador.
We have a partnership, a long-standing partnership.
They're talking vaccine sharing, economic and security issues, along with the root causes of migration. Harris is also doubling down on her call to would-be immigrants to stay home.
Do not come. Do not come. The United States will continue to enforce our laws and secure our border.
This despite pushback from her own party. On Monday, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez called it disappointing, saying seeking asylum at any U.S. border is a 100% legal method of arrival. Enormous pressure follows the vice president on this trip, with border activity spiking this year and Republicans seizing on an issue that could translate into a political advantage. Case in point, a Republican Hispanic candidate won yesterday's mayoral race in McAllen, Texas, a long-held bastion for Democrats. Heather Sell, CBN News.
Thank you, Heather. Back here in Washington tonight, severe intelligence failures across the board. The findings from a new bipartisan Senate investigation pointing to intel breakdowns resulting in chaos ahead of the January 6th breach of the Capitol. Today's report details clear warnings that supporters of former President Trump were planning to, quote, storm the Capitol with weapons and even infiltrate tunnel systems under the Capitol building. The findings of the bipartisan Senate probe come 2 weeks after Republicans blocked an independent commission into the insurrection.
And joining us now to give us a better perspective on this is the head of Regent University's police department and CBN's own chief of police, Chris Mitchell. Chief Mitchell, thanks for joining us tonight. And we want to know, how do you work with other agencies to learn about chatter and gain more intel about threats of violence? And what responsibility do you have to take those threats seriously?
Well, campus law enforcement, first of all, thank you for having me on tonight. And campus law enforcement has been fortunate to have developed a liaison program with the FBI since about right after the 2007 massacre in Virginia Tech. They started a campus liaison program, and there is an FBI agent that is assigned to each university or region area field office, and they always keep in contact with us with any chatter, intelligence, anything that's actionable for us to respond to in the event of something that we have a concern for. For big events, whether it's sporting events or some major personality coming, VIPs coming to our campus, especially here in Regent University, we've had visits from many dignitaries. And in that, we work with our local police department, with state police and the federal departments to collaborate and to come together to make proper decisions to protect our citizenry.
To your point and what you're talking about here, when you're overseeing a big event or you have some dignitary or VIP in the area, what is your standard operating procedure to keep these people safe, particularly when they're in large crowds, Chris?
Obviously, it's continued vigilance and constant connection with local authorities to identify, to vet out, and to investigate any possible threats that may come. Immediately when we receive them, whether we receive them internally, if it's internal, and we receive it, we immediately report it to the local JTTF, which is the Joint Terrorism Task Force. That task force takes that information, they process it, and then we'll get a report back or either a phone call back from the FBI liaison or an agent to advise us as to the status of it. Basically, it gives us the response necessary to prepare and be forearmed, if you will, in the event of any concerns that may arise. And granted, here at our university, because of the principle that we have here, we've had many of those occasions where we've had to step up our security protocols. And we consistently have briefings, command staff briefings. We have departmental briefings where we will discuss any actions that we need to take on a given basis based upon the threat.
A lot of preparation going into what could happen. Well, we live in a defund the police era. Do you think a situation like what happened at the Capitol on January 6th hurts the credibility of law enforcement? And if so, how does law enforcement build back trust?
Any failure on our part to be prepared for something that we did have actionable intelligence on obviously affects the credibility of the leadership in the department. Every uniformed officer is dedicated to the safety and welfare of every individual, regardless of what department we're employed by. For us to rebuild that confidence, once again, is just to continue to do the best job that we can with the information that we have. And when we do, communicate that as well with the citizens or the public in which we're engaged with, and make sure that people understand that we're being proactive and not just reactive in our response.
Well, you all do a great job there, and we appreciate it. Thank you for keeping everybody safe. CBN Police Chief Chris Mitchell, great to see you this evening.
Honored to serve. Thank you so much.
Coming up, the White House is taking heat over concerns about inflation after pouring trillions into the economy. Stay with us.
Before you marry is a bad idea.
Don't tell me there's no such thing as gun violence.
That just depends on your definition of when life begins.
Watch Dan and Dale tackle trending topics that test your faith on the next Faith Wire. Monday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel. The Global Lane takes you around the world, providing facts over fiction.
What might rising trade and geopolitical tensions mean for you on the home front?
With over 45 years of experience, award-winning journalist Gary Lane brings you the truth from a global angle.
What about the issue of immigration?
World news analysis you won't see anywhere else.
And it's all right here on the Global Lane.
Thursday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Tonight, rising inflation has some economists warning of a global time bomb and a dire warning from Deutsche Bank. Analysts say the effects of a potential crisis could be devastating. Today, a White House economist laid the blame for inflation on a temporary setback in the supply chain.
On these supply chain bottlenecks that we're seeing, some of these price dislocations, these temporary increases in delivery time, we fully expect these bottlenecks to be temporary in nature and to resolve themselves over the next few weeks. Again, these are good problems to be having. Demand came back much quicker than even companies expected.
And here now to discuss, CBN News Chief Political Analyst David Brody. David, let's start right there. More economists, saying that they're worried about the risks of inflation. The White House, as we just saw, downplaying this as a short-term threat. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, let's have a reality check. It's not a short-term threat. That was spin going on the White House podium today. There's not a question about it. There's a lot of spin that comes from politicians in the White House, whether it's Republican or Democrat. But look, even Larry Summers, who was Donald Trump, President Obama's former economic advisor, and someone close to Joe Biden as well, said he has a lot of concerns about inflationary, cautionary measures that are being, in essence, put in place by the Biden administration, based on some of what we've seen. A lot of the spending, the $2 trillion COVID stimulus bill, you got the $6 trillion budget potentially coming, and we haven't even gotten to infrastructure, and what is it, $2.7 trillion there. So there's a lot of concern actually within the own orbit of Biden and Obama. So what you saw on the podium today was spin for sure.
You say it's spin, David, but as you just pointed out, there's a $6 trillion plan that's in the works right now and being debated and discussed. Is that plan a recipe for disaster?
Well, I think you're going to, the answer is, I guess, short-term, yes. And I say short-term. The answer is yes, but of course it depends who you speak to, right? I mean, if you go to the AOCs of the world and Ilhan Omar's and Bernie Sanders, they're going to say no. But if you talk to mainstream economists, not just conservative economists, there's going to be some serious concerns going on. And so, I think about the 1970s. I don't want to date myself, and not that I was listening to Jimmy Carter talk about inflation when I was, I'll say it, 13 years old or so. But here's the truth. Jimmy Carter was talking about, back then when there was high inflation, he talked about reducing government spending. He was all about making sure government reduced spending. Joe Biden is talking about the exact opposite. So Joe Biden is definitely not Jimmy Carter, who's doing the exact opposite. And I think that's why there's a lot of concerns in some of those progressive, or at least centrist circles.
Now, David, on the humanitarian crisis at the southern border, the vice president is in charge of stemming the tide. She is facing a lot of criticism for why she's not going to the U.S.-Mexico border. To silence her critics, why does she, why isn't she just going to the border?
It makes no sense. It just doesn't. I mean, let's put politics aside for a second, put policy aside. How about just go to the border because, wait for it, it's the right PR political move. I mean, if you're in charge of the border crisis, why are you not going to the border? It makes absolutely no sense from a political PR standpoint. Now, having said that, Kamala Harris is south of the border because she and the Democrats truly believe that the crisis, and I put it in air quotes because they don't call it a crisis, but the crisis that we're experiencing here comes from the places like in Honduras and El Salvador and Guatemala and places like that. If they can get the economic conditions right there, then people won't come to America. But here's the truth. Kamala Harris said the other day, what was it, Monday of this week, she said, don't come, don't come. But at the same time, for years, she has been tweeting out the exact opposite, to come here, that everybody is welcome, was her quote. So if you're going to say everybody is welcome, and that's been your mantra for 3 or 4 years, and now all of a sudden you're vice president, you're saying don't come. Listen, the only reason she doesn't want people to come here is because it's been a political PR nightmare for the Biden administration. That's really what's going on here.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's going away either. David Brody, thank you so much. And
really impressed with the fact that you were learning about inflation at 13 years old, David.
Yes.
I never said I was
well
learning. I never said I was learning.
We'll be right back after this.
Want to be a part of a community that inspires your spiritual growth while winning prizes? The all-new CBN app. Connect with the community for prayer and encouragement. Track and set spiritual goals. Enjoy conversation starters with friends and family. And collect points to win prizes. The all-new CBN app. A great place to belong. Download the app at cbn.com/mobile. Grow, connect, have fun. The all-new CBN app.
On the home front.
Thanks for joining us for CBN's On the Home Front, where we highlight what the men and women of America's military do to defend our country. CBN honors the men and women in our military with an initiative called Helping the Home Front. It partners with churches across the country to meet the needs of their military families, from repairing homes to wiping out medical bills for wounded veterans.
Wednesday at 3 on the CBN News Channel.
Too often, we carry baggage from our past. You know what it's like. It affects everything and everyone in our lives. It's always there, weighing us down and keeping us from achieving true happiness. But do you know God never meant for us to be trapped in the past? You can be free of your baggage. Learn how God's forgiveness leads to changed lives and new beginnings. Call the 700 Club.
Welcome back. Tonight, COVID is on the decline, even as health officials struggle to meet a White House deadline to get shots in the arms of 70% of all Americans by July 4th. Today, in a briefing by the White House COVID-19 response team, health officials praised the ongoing decline of COVID cases across America.
It is in part a result of our ongoing efforts to vaccinate so many Americans. Each week, there are more and more data to demonstrate the impact of vaccination has on preventing disease and moving us out of this pandemic.
And here with us now is Dr. Jen Ashton, Chief Medical Correspondent with ABC News. Dr. Ashton, welcome. Thank you for joining us. So the White House hit its original vaccination goal, but now, vaccinations do seem to be declining pretty steadily. Do you expect the White House to meet its next goal of 70% by July 4th?
Well, I think there's some real concern just based on the pace we're at right now. But I think also this is really a story about communication of medical information. And, the healthcare professionals who counsel patients on a variety of issues, both vaccines, drugs, tests, procedures on a regular basis, understand that it's not about issuing an edict or a mandate or an order. It's really about a dialogue. It's about listening to that patient's questions and concerns and beliefs, and then educating that patient based on the available scientific and medical evidence and helping that person stratify risk versus benefit for them and the people around them. And I think that the principle of patient autonomy has been largely overlooked here. I personally am vaccinated. I was vaccinated as early as possible. My children are both vaccinated. My parents, who are a nurse and a doctor in their early 80s, are both vaccinated. And I think that the benefits far outweigh any potential low risks. But if a patient decides otherwise, even if it goes against available scientific data and my best medical judgment, the principle of patient autonomy is that they have a right to make that decision.
So what does account for some of the vaccine hesitancy that you've seen out there?
Unfortunately, I think it's myth and misconception, and that people have a difficult time really accurately stratifying 4 issues. What's the risk of the vaccine? Extremely low. What's the risk of not getting the vaccine? It's not just a risk of getting infected or dying, which that risk, fortunately for all comers, is relatively low, but it's the risk of post-COVID syndrome, long haulers syndrome, affecting anywhere from 10 to 30% of even mild COVID cases, where people have issues with their brain function, their cardiac function, their pulmonary or lung function. For me, I was not willing to take any chance in being in that category. And then what are the benefits? The benefits of how effective this vaccine is, the benefits of not getting vaccinated, really there are none. So when you ask those 4 questions and you help someone put real answers to those 4 questions, I do believe that they can make the best decision for themselves.
While we have you here, I do want to ask you about the origin of the virus. What do you make of the whole lab leak theory?
Well, people are still looking at it. And by the way, when you talk about lab leak, it's not, there's accidental lab leak and there's deliberate lab leak. And, really the investigation, as we heard from President Biden asking for more information from the intelligence community, I think that information still has to be sifted through. It's difficult to do that research after the fact, especially with a country like China that has not been that cooperative or transparent with that data. Ultimately, I do think it's of importance to find out where this virus came from, not necessarily because it can help us right now with this virus, but potentially could help us prevent being in this situation down the road. But, you know, I think anything is still on the table, even though it's less likely an origin than just spontaneously crossing animal species. But I think everything is still on the table.
Yeah. All right, Dr. Jen Ashton with ABC News, thank you so much. It's great to see you.
Thank you.
Pastor Rick Warren of Saddleback Church in California is stepping down from his position as lead pastor.
For 42 years, Kay and I have known that this time, this day would eventually arrive, and we've been waiting on God's perfect timing to begin the process.
The 67-year-old said it's time for a new generation to take over. He will continue to serve until a successor is in place. A faithful servant. We'll be right back.
Are you suffering from feeling tired or worn out during the day? Can you not turn off your brain at night? You are not alone. Hi, I'm Dr. Michael Bruce, the sleep doctor, and I've partnered with the Christian Broadcasting Network, and we're gonna bring you some unbelievable information that you can use tonight to get a better night's rest.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com to get your free copy of Protect Your Sleep today.
Nutrition, exercise, essential oils, weight loss, and more. It's Healthy Living with Lori Johnson.
Talk about what's in this.
Join CBN health reporter Lori Johnson to get the latest information from today's top health experts.
This is fantastic.
Find out what you need to know to live a healthier life. Watch Healthy Living, Tuesday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Woohoo! Hi, Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
No Super Falls man. Come.
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes too, and so much more. Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon. It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
Finally tonight, there is no doubt cicadas are on people's radar this year, especially in this part of the country. Now, weather radars are picking them up too.
That's right, Jenna. Take a look at this. D.C. area Doppler radars appeared extra cluttered this weekend from the Brood X invasion that's swarming the eastern U.S. and noisy clusters. The mating call of the cicadas, the oversized insects take over tree trunks and backyards while filling the airwaves with their mating call. The good news is they'll only stick around for 4 to 6 weeks and they won't be back for another 17 years. But you can enjoy them as a delicacy right now if you'd like to, Jenna.
Oh, all right.
Have a great one.